Hello everyone, and welcome to probably what's going to be the final update for this Charge Dash build. I got to level 90. I made a couple other upgrades. You can see right off the bat I finally did the Flasks that I wanted. This Onslaught one could be a Cinder Swallow, but really it's about the same either way. This Diamond Flask probably gets changed to a Bottled Faith if you can afford it, but I think I'm happy with this setup right now. The two mods you really need are Immune to Bleed and Immune to Freeze, since we don't have any other way to get Immune to Freeze. This would be giving us Immune to Ignite, but Strength isn't higher than Dex right now. Ideally, if you could hit that, that would be really nice, because there's some bosses. I've found a few on Delirium that channel like a big fire blast, and so if you get touched by that fire blast, it throws a huge ignite on you. Sometimes that kills us, so if you could get the ignite immunity on this, that'd be great. But since I don't have it, I probably should roll this until I hit ignite immunity. It would really help survivability in some cases. But so the main changes are taking Atziri's Promise. It's a big increase in damage because the 15% more damage. Again, a little bit more lifesteal with the 2% chaos damage leech. And then this is 15% penetration, which is really nice. Also happens to give my lowest resist is fire, so gives 10% reduced damage of fire resist. And ideally for this one, if you could line up all three of your resists to be exactly equal, that would be the ideal, just the perfect situation, but I couldn't do that. Part of the reason was because this ring has 44 cold resist, so that just made it very hard to get those even. If you don't have this, and say you're using this other chest, Atziri's Splendor, which gives all resist. So if you're on Atziri's Splendor, if you get like an all resist ring, like Taming is an upgrade I'm going to talk about, but say you get all resist here, you get all resist from the shield, and then if you could get your passive jewels to give just all resist, say like through Veteran Defender or just the other points. Well, let's talk about them. Like Faith and Steel gives 8, and instead of my random 12 to lightning and fire, if that could give just 10 all resist, there's actually a reasonable chance that you can just keep all resist equal doing that, which is probably worth it to get that extra defensive boost from the first effect there. So I probably dove in a little too quick to the Flasks, but I'm gonna go over the build as a whole, maybe make a couple comments on things that I would still change if I were investing more currency into this, or that I might even change if I play this build a little bit more. So the Taming Ring is the only real item that's changed here. So what ended up happening was I got the Taming Ring with the resistances, and that allowed me to pull out the old jewel that I had here, which gave it had like 12 to fire lightning and 11 to fire cold, so it was giving quite a few resists. And then I had a subpar ring that was filling out the rest of them. So instead of both of those, the Taming fills out resist nicely. You can see here it's 44 resist. You can get it up to, I don't know, like 48 I think, if you get max and then quality of the resists up. It's a really nice option, and is also a good option for the non-crit build if you're using the Pyrrhandis Signet ring, because it's a unique item and helps your resists. So Pyrrhandis Signet gives you the extra int from it, it gives you a bunch of elemental damage, and you get the resist. So it's a really nice ring, and since it's later in the league right now, it was much cheaper. It was like 80 chaos, which granted isn't nothing, but right now exalts are 190 chaos, so it's less than half an exalt for it, which felt like a good deal. I ended up buying that level 4 Enlightened support, which I found out after I bought it and then socketed in, it does nothing for me. The thought was maybe if I use this in the Vertex Mask, it would reduce mana reservations enough to allow me to put Blood and Sand somewhere. And then, since that only reduces 10% mana, but if you count these up, and it's easy to see them here, 29 and 21 is 50, plus 42 is 92. So I only have 8% of my mana left. And I was thinking maybe I could just grab this 4% reduce, but I'd need to put into a calculator or something, because if I do that and then I land on like exactly 100% of my mana reduced, I won't be able to use like Ancestral Warchief or Tempest Shield or any of those other random skills. I would only be able to use Dash and Charge Dash and the Vol skills, because I don't think they cost mana. So that was the other purchase. It does open up the possibility to switch out the Vertex Mask. Like I mentioned last time, ideal here would, since I have all my resist fill out, and the only thing this is doing for me is giving me a bunch of evasion energy shield, all I would really want would be a Hubris Circlet with probably equivalent energy shield. Maybe a little less, like getting that same amount is pretty hard. But somewhere between like 200 and maybe 300 optimistically. But you can get a Hunter's Influence one to give you % intelligence. So it's possible to get plus 60 intelligence, plus 10% increased intelligence, and then whatever else, the energy shield mods. Or resist if you need it, or something else to fill out things. The other option, instead of the % intelligence, is getting a, I think it's Redeemer? Crusader or Redeemer? Probably Redeemer. That gives, nearby enemies have negative % lightning resist, which kind of acts as a more damage multiplier. It might be more worth it than the % increased intelligence, but that's adding to damage, where the % increased intelligence also adds to your energy shield and just general survivability. So that would be maybe one of the next step items in the setup. That and then Bottled Faith. The other option I've got for an upgrade here is I bought another Hunter's Belt. I had sold the previous one that I had hit the % increased attributes on, but similar idea. With the Hunter influence, you can get I think 12% increased attributes, and then you can quality it up to be 14% increased attributes, which is pretty comparable to the Cyclopean Coil. Since you don't care about the life on this, and they cannot be shocked isn't a huge deal. The damage is nice, but you would trade the damage to get, say, like 14% attributes, which would increase strength index as well, which gives you defensive stats through Shaper's Touch. But so it increases those, and then you could also hit flat intelligence on it. You can also hit a whole bunch of energy shield, because the implicit's 80 for crystal belts, and then even if you hit like some medium roll of like 20 to 30, that's still great. So you could hit a belt that gives you like 100 to 120 energy shield and 50 intelligence and a similar 14% increased attributes, which I definitely think would be better than this Cyclopean Coil. But those are, again, expensive, and I think the amount that upgrades your build for how much you would have to invest in it just isn't quite worth diving into. But yeah, I think those would be the last three things. Would be switching this for a Huber circuit with increased intelligence, percent intelligence, switching the Cyclopean Coil for a crystal belt with int and percent int, and then switching out the diamond flask for a bottled faith. And then probably keeping these two on freeze immune and bleeding immune. I guess the Syntrex are another thing that you could upgrade, but I just haven't. I honestly don't know how to craft boots very well. Like, the Tailwind thing seems awesome, but the ones I've looked at are so expensive, and I don't really know how to like craft that or what's a good way to go about that. It's also hard to get more int than this and more energy shield and those other mods you want. But I know one of the mods you can craft is cannot be frozen or chilled, so that could be an alternative to this Quicksilver Flask. If you're doing the non-crit build, I basically take back all those things I said, because having the unique items in here to go along with the Parandus Signet is better. Just because 2% increased intelligence, ignoring the percent there, so let's say it's 2% of 1,000, that's still, what, 20 intelligence per item? So it's worth it to just hang on to your uniques a lot of times. It's probably better unique than this, but oh, I still need to change this, what's allocated on that. Right now I just have plus 30 int, but there's way better options, like even this guy, which is 5% attack speed and dex and int and increased crit chance. But I just got lost like looking into what I want to change it to, and just never ended up doing it. Because even these options are really good, the penetration and elemental damage. I think this guy's the other really good one. Penetration, elemental damage, attack speed, shield defenses, but no int. If I'm committed to the Cyclopean Coil, if I could get, I need 26 strength, would let me be immune to ignite, so 30 strength. It's probably not worth just grabbing like B for one of these. So those are the items. Basically, the rest is pretty standard. Like obviously you're using Hawa since you're instacking. That's the whole build. It's Ares Reflection. I talked about last time. I got this upgrade off of Mirror. Though last time I said it was so 64 to 77 was like a 1300, but since Mirror also has 50 int, and you're probably actually going to be closer to 60 because it's cheaper to get a 60 int one. Really, it's about 1,000 rather than 1,300. So a little more survivability with this, but totally workable if you just use it Series Mirror. For the crit build, there's probably an in-between option you could go between Mirror. If you just grab a titanium shield with int and high energy shield, it's probably the good stepping stone before this, and you might even find one that's arguably better than this, depending on what mods or how much resist it has. If you can find one with a really nice resist, then it's potentially worth just doing that and then being able to pick up more offensive like int things, not having to worry about resist other places. say in the jewels I have a lot of resist, you can ignore that. Astromantis, I like this over a lot of the other amulets. A lot of them are probably marginally better, the ones that are like 50 int and then percent attributes. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, they're probably better because then you can hit like flat lightning damage, percent damage per like 15 int, and some other things. So you can squeeze out a little bit more damage. But again, for how much this is worth versus how much those amulets are worth, it's like 50 exalts for like a relatively small upgrade. But that's something that can be changed. But this is pretty much the go-to for any attribute stacking build. So Shaper's Touch, the plus frenzy charges is definitely not necessary, but it is a nice little DPS boost, and they're actually not too expensive. So you could grab that. The other option is getting another curse. For the crit build, we're cursing with Assassin's Mark via the ring. So if you did pick up like a curse with LE weakness on hit, you just have to allocate the passive for it, for the extra curse whispers. That's mostly it for the items though. This Status Garb is pretty insane. Just a whole lot of energy evasion energy shield. And int. I think I mentioned last time that Itzuri's Splendor is probably my next choice, especially if you're not doing crit and you're doing the Paranda Signet. Like, just take a unique one, because really resist and then high evasion energy shield is totally workable. Soccer Ball's Nest is the kind of min-maxy one. Gives a lot of attributes, gives the reduced mana reserve, so you can use these and then also use Blood and Sand, which Blood and Sand is just a nice more damage multiplier. So that's pretty much it for items, as I say that for the third time. Rings really is just resist. For the crit one, you want Assassin's Mark, but really it's resist. If you can hit some int, it's like a nice bonus. The Taming just ended up being a good resist ring. I actually couldn't find any other rings that gave me the resist I wanted and int, so instead I pretty much traded out the int to get all the elemental damage modifiers here. So let's move on to the passives. So I really like the in-stacking builds. I think I've mentioned I've played Charge Dash several times now with Hawa, and it's really nice with the cluster jewels since you're kind of going around the outside for the most part anyway. It makes it so like just running to grab the outer cluster jewels doesn't feel like a waste, since the travel nodes are still nice for you. The crit one, you kind of need to be on this outside more, where for non-crit you have an easier time like just going through the center a little more to like grab this jewel, potentially the aura stuff. Void Barrier is nice, the resist is always helpful. And this with Fertile Mind turns all these dex ones into int. So like the Flask recharge and strength, all this stuff is nice. It's just pretty efficient since all the dex is int. This Forces of Nature, if you're picking up a lot of the penetration nodes, I think it's potentially worth it. I think the non-crit build has to kind of prioritize these because they're just some of the more efficient damage nodes for you, where the crit one you want to prioritize the damage, or the crit multiplier damage ones. So like Command of the Elements, Primeval Force, Forces of Nature. Last time I'd skipped this guy and just outlocated it, and then with the non-crit one you get Herald of Thunder. But with the crit one, just these jewels end up just so much more damage. And mine aren't even that strong, like having 30-ish crit multiplier on each one, when in theory you could get up to 60% on each one, or close to 60 if all four are there, all four of the multipliers. So with the crit one, I think these become more important, just making sure to pick up as many jewel nodes as you can. I think this is nice over here, but basically wherever your tree ends up, just find where you have the most notables and throw it there. So this one I had 5. Some other builds I've done, over here you end up with like Deep Thoughts, because if you decide to dual wield, if you decide to dual wield and you're one of the times I'd swapped Swift Killer for Patient Reaper just for the extra recovery. So Mysticism was kind of cool because you got the Frenzy and Charge generation dual wielding. But I don't know, there's tons of options. Again, since it's in stacking, the non-int nodes are relatively few. So you're traveling to pick up some of the big things, but really you're just trying to pick up any of these like int plus somethings. So like this one's really nice, but this is nice and it gives you this extra percent mana as extra energy shield, and then extra energy shield. What is it, 7 points? Really nice for the non-crit ones, but for crit you're having to travel pretty far to make sure to pick up the crit multiplier stuff. So yeah, I'm hovering a lot of these things just so you can kind of see them. I'll probably put the Path of Building in here too, but I guess the emphasis is this, more than many builds I've played, is like pretty loose, where a lot of builds is like you definitely want to be doing these certain things, where this one there's not really a hard fast rule on any of it. Like this jewel here is worth, does it tell you? But it's worth like 56%. Yeah, 56% crit multiplier, but we're spending a lot of points to get down there and get it. This, while the resist is nice, isn't even all that important. So like if you could just spend these to go down and grab this jewel, and then you have like the 2 other points and you put them wherever, like just grabbing more in here, or you have something else you want to do, you could easily get a jewel that's similar to this. Say like these jewels, like this one's 29 crit multiplier, so it's half the crit multiplier, but you can get some defensive stats on it, and then you get a couple points to do whatever you want with. Likewise, the cluster jewels are really up to you. If you end up with the series Reflection, Gladiatorial Combat's really good. That'll probably be something I'd look at just to see if I find a cheap one. Because Veteran, Defender, Gladiatorial Combat seems real nice. Precise Retaliation's okay. I'd use the Betrayal Leo to exalt this jewel and hit Martial Prowess, which was just a nice extra point instead of taking one of these attack damage ones. But pretty basic tree. If I do post the POV, I might create some other path options, probably a non-crit one as well. The last build I did, I came around this way rather than going up here, to get like all of these, and then since you're going through here and hitting all the stacks, if you do Fertile Mind here, it converts them all to int. This becomes 20 int instead of dex, so it makes this pathing more efficient. Same if you put Fertile Mind here. So just all of a sudden these pathings become efficient, you get to get charisma, and it makes soccer balls less important. I'm probably saying soccer balls wrong, but and then just gives you increased aura effect. But you're kind of getting similar things with these nodes. I ended up with these channeling nodes here. I had gained 4 levels from last time, and these were basically the 4 points, or 6 levels from last time. So these 4 points, and then I socketed that Abyssal Jewel that I had to get the onslaught effect, onslaught on kill. So the channel notes are nice. Chance to gain endurance charges helps with Immortal Call and just gives you some damage reduction. Speaking of Immortal Call, I'm going to call that good on the passive tree. Pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, just let me know. But definitely not a hard science as far as that goes. So I'm going to talk about skills now. So Charge Dash, I haven't colored this properly really. Between Lightning Pen and added lightning damage, there's some movement that could happen here. The ones that I definitely like, Charge Dash. I really like Fortify, even though it's a little bit less damage. Just always having Fortify up is really nice. Elemental damage with attacks is probably your best damage support. Infuse channeling is really nice. It gives good damage, and the infusion gives some nice defensive things. Lightning Pen, since we're not really putting points into any of the Lightning Pen things on the tree, it ends up being, I don't want to say necessary, but just more good for us. So I think this one's better than some of the other options. But added lightning is almost certainly worse than either damage on full life or pulverize. I need to double check the POV for it, but it's just suboptimal, I think, than those two. Like, damage on full life is good, more damage, and I think our int is high enough that the flat damage is less good than the multiplier. I want to say pulverize. I'm still leveling 1, but I want to say pulverize is better, and it gives us increased AoE. This one's only level 8, and it's same more damage, but the less attack speed might do it. But really, it's just put into POV and see how it looks. So that would be the change. Swap out added lightning damage for probably pulverize, maybe damage on full life. And you could do the same with Lightning Pen if you change your tree to get more of the Lightning Pen nodes, or if you get like 2 of them and then allocate one on your amulet, then Lightning Pen probably becomes less useful than another multiplier. So I still have Flame Dash here, but really it's just Dash and Second Wind has been more than good enough. I thought I might need to use Flame Dash instead because it has more charges than Dash, but Dash has been great. And since I have Fortify on Charge Dash, I don't need to have any sort of Fortify on rolling blades or that kind of setup. So it makes it really efficient. You really only need the 2 jewels. For auras, then Lighten. Level 4 if you don't have Vertex, but level 3 works well with Vertex. So the 2 definite ones are Herald of Thunder and Discipline. Your energy shield build, so Discipline's great. Herald of Thunder is flat lightning damage for a rather small mana reserve, so it's good. Grace is the somewhat questionable one. So I think it's worth just having around for the Vol Grace, given the huge dodge every once in a while, or on boss fights, or whenever, when you start taking too much damage. I like using Grace over Wrath. I keep it here just to look at it. But I like using Grace over Wrath because the Trickster Ascendancy, giving % of evasion back as energy shield when you get hit. So the difference is 45,000 with Grace on versus 26,000 with Grace off. So like 20,000 energy shield, or sorry, 20,000 evasion, and it's close to like 800 energy shield more you gain when you have Grace on when you get hit. So it's like 1,800 versus 1,000 getting back. Also about 10% less chance to get hit, going from 66 to 76. So I prefer it. With the crit build, I don't feel like the damage is too lacking. On the non-crit build, maybe it flips. You end up with some more defensive options. So you just have higher energy shield, so you're more comfortable using Wrath. I think I mentioned it in the last time. I'm honestly just not quite as good, so maybe someone a little bit better could use Wrath, have this amount or less energy shield, and still feel perfectly safe, and just have that extra damage boost there. But so far I've preferred Grace on. It's pretty noticeable having it off and running things. So that's been my choice. I finally put in the Mortal Call caster and damage taken. Immortal Call is the option because we have a larger effective health pool. So rather than absorbing just a flat amount of damage like Steel Skin does, we just take a percentage less damage from hits. And then now that we can get endurance charges via, well, chance to get them while channeling from that medium cluster jewel from Enduring Focus, it just makes Immortal Call a little bit better, I think. And then Wave of Conviction is on the caster and damage taken, which this is level, so it's casting pretty often. But really the idea is they get exposure to lightning damage when they take damage from this. So really helps the single target damage. The other set that I put in is the Ancestral War Chief. So I went with War Chief over Protector, just because I decided to do all 4 as damage nodes. So LA damage, damage on full life, and I did Culling Strike, partly because I couldn't get this one red. Maybe if I had 4 red, this would be multiple totems, but it's green, so I did Culling Strike, which is usually nice too. Getting the culling on the boss and such is nice. But this is another just DPS booster. You can see it's like 100,000 DPS. Not an enormous amount, but pretty significant in terms of how much damage we're doing. I guess as a note, the tooltip DPS for this is not going to be like a real DPS thing you'll ever see. The PoE has it a little more right, I think, but this is really happening. You can see the attack time's 0.2 seconds, but because of how Charge Dash works and like the distance you run, factoring in, and how fast you get to that distance, and then the final wave of damage. It's you're just not going to be able to see like a good 2 million damage or whatever it is. So just a disclaimer there. So single target damage, defensive setup, wave of conviction to help single target. The rest is pretty similar. These really aren't being used. Tempest Shield helps survivability a bit, but not overly much, honestly. Just a slight extra chance to block. I don't use Blood Rage all that much because we don't need the life leech, and so it's just the attack speed. We already are gaining frenzy charges pretty often. So it was there. It was kind of a leftover of wanting to do Flicker for a while, so I grabbed Blood Rage, and then not doing Flicker Strike, so Blood Rage has been sitting here. So in theory, you have 4 slots to do whatever with. Like Wrath is doing nothing here. Blood Rage pretty much does nothing, and I rarely use Tempest Shield. Flame Dash also is doing absolutely nothing. So there's still some room for improvement if you can find, or if you have like some setup that you like. Could be a cast when damage taken golem setup. You could do some cast when damage taken curse setup instead of doing this assassin's mark on hit ring. Another option is like cast when damage taken, wave of conviction, curse on hit. Like conductivity is pretty good. Especially on the non-crit one, because you don't need assassin's mark. But you could do the same thing if you take the extra curse node, or the extra curse, the extra curse notable. So plenty of options, and this is why I'm probably another reason why I'm not great, is because I just kind of get lost and I don't know what to do to fill out the rest of these skills that I just don't really use. But they're there. I think that's most of everything on the build. Went over the passive tree probably overly much. Again, just any questions, let me know. Or if there's any points that seems like I'm missing that seem good. I know a lot of charge dash builds I've seen previously have gone in here for Retribution, Precision, Sanctity. A lot of them have continued down this way to pick up Harrier, and then you get the attack speed and this dual socket. But yeah, like this isn't that exciting to me. And so it's like so many points just to get the jewel socket. A lot of the ones I've done have stayed in here rather than going to the outside. Have stayed in here and then picked up Charisma and then gone through to Primal Spirit with the Fertile Mind Jewel here. There's just so many options. Another thing you can do that I've seen a lot more recently is put Unnatural Instinct here. A Natural Instinct I saw for relatively cheap earlier this league, like 7 exalts, but now it's like 20 or so last time I checked. So that's just out of the budget, like Bottled Faith and other things. But that's an easy way to get endurance charges, and then just helps make sure you always have power frenzy charges. Also gives some nice extra energy shield from just these small guys, and then some extra mana, which doesn't matter much unless you're grabbing this or getting a Watcher's Eye with the max mana as energy shield, all affected by clarity. So, since I had that belt that I was thinking about crafting, and I was thinking about crafting that helm to try to get the percent in. All of those I was going to use dense fossil crafting, and I had used a few of them to craft that original belt that I sold. So I ran out of dense fossils, so now I want to get some more. They're selling for 3.5 chaos each, which isn't overly much, but since I've been delving, I figured I'd try to get in while delving. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with looking at like where fossils are from, but if you just Google PoE fossil map, there's a dozen pictures that'll show you where to get which fossil. So dense fossils are found in fungal caverns. So I'm gonna go look at that. I'll talk about delve a little bit. It's one of my favorite things, and something I've really liked charge dash for versus other builds I've tried, especially a lot of the melee builds. I've liked charge dash more. But one of the key things here is you're looking for destructible walls, and you can kind of see that if you look at this, maybe zoom out like this, maybe not quite that far, but this is kind of based on a square grid, right? Like you can kind of see the square here, and then like this is square here, like you can cut it out. So within each square that doesn't have a point will have a destructible wall. So if I want to find destructible walls in fungal caverns, I'm looking for something like this, where this square doesn't have a point inside of it, so I know there's going to be a destructible wall along the path in here. And that's why I went this way, because this goes through 1, 2, 3 squares. So I knew there was going to be 3 destructible walls along the way, and there were. I don't know how common that knowledge is. I'm sure other people have made videos talking about that. But I think that's one of the most important things. Some of the looser information is in regards to like these guys, the floating ones. The only real advice there is each point has to have 1, 3, or 4 paths away from it. So like this one has 1 path away from it, but this one only has 2, 1 up and 1 down. So since it has to have 3, I know this point has to connect from here. So if I really wanted to get here, I would first go around, travel here, and then peek around in the darkness to try to find the wall that connects to here, and then go destroy that wall, and then it opens up the path. If you can't find one around your floating point that has only 2 paths, for me, I usually just give up on them. But it's gonna have to be, if there's no point with 2, it has to be one of the ones with 3, because it can't be one with 4, because then that would be a 5th one from it, and it can't be one of the paths with 1, because if then it connected here, that would mean this one has 2, and they can't just have 2. I might look for an example just to kind of explain a little bit more. It's probably not necessary. So like this one, looking around it, I don't think I see any that just have 2 away from them. Like this guy's got 3, this guy's got 3, up, left, and right, this guy's got 3. And that's something too that was confusing at first, is it could be pretty far. It's like any of the ones around it, where you would think it'd be some of the closer ones, but sometimes it could be like this one over here that happens to connect to it. Or like this one over here. So this one I would just give up on for the most part, because there's just so many places it could connect. Like this has 3, 3, 3, 3. This one has 4, so I wouldn't check this one because it would make this the 5th, and it can't have 5. Wouldn't check these 2 because they only have 1, so if they connected here, that'd be 2, and that's not possible. So just looking at the 3s, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and like 9 possible points. This one's pretty loose. And you probably check the closest first, like these two, this one. But, so you have like 8 points that you would want to go to, and then like peek around in the darkness to see if it's like a path goes on, to see if you can get to it. So, like I said, unless you really, really want this, I would give up on this one. But for that other one that we had seen, or for this one's a nice one. So you see this has a path to it. This only has 2 paths connecting to this weapons one. So I know this has to be the point that connects here. Not because it's closer or anything, this is actually like physically closer, but because it's only got 2 paths, and that's not possible. So that was the other big piece of delve advice that was cool, because a lot of times, like for these azurite fissures, or if you get, I don't know, just some other mod, like one of these like fossil things in there, or a currency one, or maps, all those are like pretty nice to grab. So say like here, maybe I'll do it because the maps one is probably worth it. But if I went here, I know this one has to be the one that connects, because there's only 2 paths. So first we're going to go through one of these fungal hollows to try to find some dense fossils. So this has quite a few spots that potentially have broken destructible walls. The one I was moving through was over here. I think this one was one of the good ones, because this is going to be 1 cube here, and for these open areas you kind of have to trace along to find the cubes. So this way this will be the point. So this will be a cube, this will be a cube, and I can see that this point is outside of this cube. So it'll be 2, or I'm saying cubes, but squares, 2 squares that'll have destructible walls. So I'm going to be keeping an eye out for those. I'm going to run this so you guys can see how delve works. This video is so convoluted, I've been jumping everywhere. But I mean, from my experience watching videos, I feel like I don't know anything, so I'm always fine with content creators explaining any of their knowledge they have, because half the time I don't know why they're doing something. So just talking about anything always seems nice. So you can kind of see with Charge Dash, you stay pretty mobile. You get to stand in place and clear a little bit ahead of you and then jump up there. So that's nice. Unfortunately, in this destructive wall, there's basically nothing, just the hidden loot. A note for these delves is make sure you check that you have flares and dynamite before you start running the delve. Way too often, I just start running and then remember that I don't have any dynamite or flares or something, and then it becomes a huge waste. And I used to carry less flares, but really you want, I'd say at least 6. If there's going to be 2 or more destructive walls, really I prefer 10 or more flares, because it just makes it so much easier to run into the dark, check these further passages, and then you just have so many flares you can drop one and not worry about being stingy with them. Where I used to run with like 6 or 7, and you just have to always be mindful of how many you've got left and try to run out and run back in, and it just creates more room for error. All these small, you can see on the map, the little small inlets will usually have a box or 2, but it's the deeper inlets where you'll find your destructible walls. Fungal caverns is probably my least favorite, because I haven't run it too much, so it seems the most chaotic. in terms of like, I don't know the pattern of where the walls are, or if there is a pattern, whereas the frozen areas have a nice pattern. So we saw here I found a corroded fossil set. I got 2 corroded fossils, which are great, and 2 dense fossils, which is exactly what I wanted. So this run was successful. That was my 2 walls, so most everything else now will just be little inlets here. And so something else when delving, if you break your 2 walls and then say you die later, so if I died right now, when I go back, those walls will be broken. So I would lose my sulfite, and if I reran the delve, I'd have to do a long delve but not get the destructible walls for him. Hey, nice. So I'd say once you break your walls, just play a little bit safer. Like, there's not a huge reason to go off to the side if it's sketchy or if you're low on flares. So just make sure you don't die after you break your walls. If you're doing the delve and it's still early and you haven't broken your walls, and you die before you get to any of the walls, then when you go and do that delve again, all the walls will still be there and they'll still have stuff behind them. So it's like a little more reasonable to run off and do crazy stuff before you've broken your walls. So yeah, Charge Dash I've really liked for pretty much 2 reasons during delve, and the one is we kind of saw as I was running it, but you get to run your guy ahead. Like if I'm running up there and my cart's moving, kind of clear the way and then hop to where all the cleared guys are. So it feels pretty safe because of that. The other thing while you're running is if there's an Azurite node, you can touch it, and then it takes like a minute for the Azurite to pop out and then collect to you. So you can sit here channeling, it all collects, and then jump forward with your cart. So that's nice during the actual running. And then it's nice for these Azurite encounters because a lot of times you can just like pick a corner or a side and loop your Charge Dash guy to hit almost the whole field of guys, and you don't really have to do anything. And because you have Leech and because of the Trickster Ghost Shrouds, a lot of times even if you get hit, you'll just stay at max energy shield, or you'll drop and pop back up almost immediately. So I want to find more corners essentially that go through fungal caverns. So this is pretty much one because this square doesn't have a point in it. So that one will be a nice one. I think I'm gonna kind of prove the explanation I gave about how this works, because this to me just wasn't intuitive for a while, because I just assumed it had to be one of these close ones to get to here, but really it's going to be this one is going to let you get to the maps. So I'm going to fill up on dynamite flares. Again, I forget to do that all the time, but something to remember. Just drop off some of the stuff. Some of it because it's not like I'm going to get a ton of things from this delve. And then so it costs nothing to just explore and see if I can find the wall here. But so you can see my 2 paths, and so I can just kind of duck into the darkness around here to see if one of these leads into a path. So this one looks like it's going to lead to it. So not that way. So here it is right here. So drop a dynamite and a flare, but then after you break it, Yeah, this is something I'm not sure about. I don't know if you have to backtrack your way through. If you don't, awesome, but it seems like you potentially do. So this works twofold. These ones that contain maps are nice, especially the higher depth you go. I'm only 165, so decent. Like, I can find red maps there, so ideally I find some. It goes through an abyssal depths, which I don't really care about, but it also has a corner through fungal caverns, so that means I'll have a destructible wall through fungal caverns, which is exactly what I want. So I'll go ahead and do it. I just imagine anyone watching this cringing as I step through the exploding, like whatever that is, the enemy dying exploding thing. So for these, I like to check all of these little side passages, even though I'm like sure there's not going to be doors over there so soon. Oh man, abyssal depths is miserable sometimes, because like I was saying about the patterns, like since you kind of saw there the path loops back on itself, it's like you don't know if you're going to find a door there or if the path's going to loop back. So if the path loops back, you end up in this awkward thing where your crawler like runs ahead to catch up to you when it sees you on the right path. Oh, I'm gonna die here. So if you don't realize that your crawler's speeding up super fast to catch up to where it thinks you want to meet it, then you just end up like lost. It might happen here too, where physically I was pretty close to my crawler, so it kept running ahead, but actually I was behind that wall. Alright, there should be a breakable wall somewhere. Oh, I forgot. I already broke the wall. Because I had to break the wall to get into this thing, and that counts as that first corner. If that makes sense. I'll explain that in a second when I have a minute to talk a little more thoroughly about it. Jewelries are usually worth trying to pick up, but I mean, obviously it's not worth dying. So me misclicking just is painful. Aberrant fossils don't matter, so I don't care enough to die. Holy cow. Just imagine how rough this is for anyone that would be playing this game better. It's just the simple, like, why are you standing there? It's something I didn't know for a long time. Monsters in the darkness are immune to just damage and anything in general. So if you're just trying to kill guys that are standing in the darkness or far enough out into the darkness, you can't actually kill them. So especially with this build, you stand there channeling, just hoping that they die and they don't take damage. While you're channeling, you're often not really hovering them, so you're not seeing if you're dealing damage. But cool red maps. Hey, red maps. Just 2. I mean, 2 red maps is worth it. So what I was talking about was typically if this was a typical path, we'd expect one breakable wall here and then one breakable wall here. Looking at it like this is a square without a node, so breakable wall, and this is a square without a node, so breakable wall, destructible wall, whatever you want to call them. But because we broke the wall here to open up this path, this wall is effectively doesn't count, or we already broke it, if you want to say, like that wall that we broke before we started the actual path counts as our destructible wall for that square. So we only saw the one for this square, which is what we wanted anyway, the fungal growth, the fungal caverns one, but we didn't find anything good. So so now I'm pretty much out of sulfite. Maybe I can do a short run somewhere that's got like one breakable wall potentially, but probably not. I don't want to go too high, because if you go too high, your chance of finding fossils drops. I don't know the exact depths or anything, but I just try to stay about my lowest depth. Yeah, so even this one would give us a breakable wall, but we don't even have enough for that. And if I go up too much higher, and that doesn't have a wall, and this one does, but it's way too far. That one won't. So it looks like we're kind of out of luck. Like, was this depth 90? It's probably like stops being worth it. Maybe we'll try this one. This gives us one breakable wall here, and you know, maybe we get lucky. I generally like to spend just as much sulfite as I can, like clear the bank basically, and then just do all my delve missions and try to fill it back up. Delve missions or scarabs. In this league, scarabs are very cheap, because Delirium drops them as one of the rewards. Should go back just to be sure. Oh, and here's what I was talking about as well. I only have one flare because I totally forgot to prep that. So like where normally I might flare there, clear the room, and then pick up that thing, I just don't want to flare because I've only got one of them. So like there was lost wealth in there, but I'm pretty much saving my flare for the one wall that I'm gonna find. Here it is. So I don't want to flare outside of it. So hidden loot, hidden treasures, not great. I think hidden treasures is always a unique item, or usually a unique item. So yeah, no fossil, but I should finish clearing it. Hey, flare cache. For this build specifically, I don't know if it's just all builds, but the one thing that really gets you, or that really does damage, is those shriekers doing their like sonic cone attack. It's like their channeled attack that they'll like stand and scream. That more than anything will just melt you if you stand in it. So the real problem is, depending on where you ran your guy, if you just did like a little circle or something, and then they scream at like an angle like this that covers your entire path, your future spot, and you can get in like a situation where you're, like, even if you pop forward, you still have to like run in a weird way to get away from it. So there's delves. If you haven't delved much, or if it's intimidating, honestly, like I've said, I'm not great at any of this. Delves just become like one of my favorite things. But I don't even do anything super optimally or any of the fancy like collection methods for soul fight, or like you see people getting to thousands in delve depths. I don't do anything like that. I don't know how far this build could go specifically. If you're really, one of the things I've seen is you want to just keep moving. So since this build is channeling, it kind of loses on that end. So I'm sure once you get to a depth where things just start one-shotting your 7,000 plus energy shield, you just have to stop because you can't really play like the hit and run evasive thing quite as well. You've always got to stop and channel for a bit, and if you just do like the stop channel for a second, you lose so much damage. So I don't know how deep it could go specifically, but as far as just like casually delving as you complete your soul fight missions, I really like it. And if you have questions on just how delve works in general, I'd be happy to answer anything that I can. I mean, like I said, I don't like go super high. I think the highest I've gotten is like 200 something, high 200s, but it's been fun. I think too, like just finding fossils feels very rewarding. This league they're a little cheaper, but some leagues like serrated or corroded fossils are worth upwards of like 15 to 20 chaos. So, and corroded you find in those fungal caverns, serrated you find in the frozen ones, and the frozen ones, like I said, have like real nice patterns to them. They're laid out very linearly, so rarely do you get like stuck on walls or little curves. So I'm gonna grab one of our tier 16 maps. So if you're running for soul fight, quality increases your soul fight for the map. So I try always quality it up, and then if I have it at quality and alk it, I'm trying to hit 80 plus ideally. So like this is nice, but negative max resist and can't regen is it's like a little rough, but it's doable. Again, because of Trickster, Ghost Shrouds, and Leech, it's doable, and we don't really use mana. So I'm still gonna try it. Maybe I shouldn't try it. I don't want to die a whole bunch on my recording. This one is fine. It's higher than 75, which I had said 80, but 75 is fine. Oh, the other thing is grab a sacrifice, increase the full quality, I think, by 5%. You could probably do other stuff. If I'm just running it for soul fight, I usually just do the quantity here. Sorry, I keep saying quality, but quantity is really what I mean, which quality increases quantity for maps, or for maps when you're chiseling them, but this is quantity and not quality. But so for specifically soul fight, I'll do this often. And then usually you get anywhere between 1,500 and like 2,000 soul fight per node. But mostly running this too is like a final, here's a tier 16 map, just an out tier 16 map on the build. I want to hit Delirium. It's been like pretty comfortable, especially with the Mortal Call now. It's much less likely that I'm getting one shot, even if I stand in stuff. It's been pretty forgiving. I mean, for Delirium, it's still a little sketchier, especially like you still can't stand in those red explodey guys, those ones. But But there's definitely more leeway than there was the last couple videos without the Immortal Call. So I just wanted to show that a little bit. So 1200. Maybe I was highballing some of those numbers. It's going to be like 12 and 13. But it scales up with quantity. So if you're really... Scarabs are what pushes it, because the Scarabs give more sulfite, some percent more. I think Rusted is 20% more. And Gilded ones are only like 10 chaos this league. So if you run out of Delve missions, Scarabs, especially this league, are worth it. But even when Scarabs are more expensive, they're often worth it. Even just the Rusted ones for like 5-ish chaos each, just guaranteeing you get Nico gives you like a handful of sulfite, which is worth your money generally. If you find like one fossil with that sulfite, then it pays for itself. And Delve Works is a nice way to level up gems. It's, I don't know, I'd say it's fun. I like it. It feels faster paced and you never have to backtrack really. Whereas maps for me, I run them slow a lot of times because I'm picking up stuff and I always find myself backtracking. Or picking up too many yellow items and then going back. So at this point in the game, these yellow highlighted ones are because they're item level 84. Like I've said infinite times at this point, I'm not great, but since I see those so often, I just don't pick them up most of the time. Even though I know like item level 84 is the sweet spot for a lot of like the Vol Regalia or Hubris Circlets. So if I should be picking those up and you guys notice it and are like, you're crazy, you pick those up, then just let me know, because right now it doesn't look like just random item level 84 stuff sells for anything, but I could be wrong or just be looking at the wrong something. Because even like diamond rings, it's like the base itself, if it's not like influenced or something, then there's not much value that I've seen tied to it. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, I'm gonna add the paste bin to the description so you have it. I might put in like the plan for the next like 5 to 10 points if you happen to like play a build and level it, or if you're like regretting a high level character into it just to try out some new builds. So you can just see the rest of it, but it's pretty flexible, and I encourage you to just buy a bunch of regrets and just try out some different setups if you're investing in the build anyway, just to try out. And I think that's mostly it. Final update for Charge Dash. Feels good. It's with going the crit build has felt good this league, and it's been the smoothest clearing that I've had out of my Charge Dash builds. The last one I played was in Metamorphosis, and then I also played one in Legion. So Legion itself just feels awkward because you just can't get around fast enough to AoE down everything. And then Metamorphosis, depending on the mods, with the non-crit one, the damage was just feeling a little low. But I think Cluster Jewels largely help solve that, especially with Supercharge. But But so far the crit one has felt the best as far as clear speed. Maybe a little squishier. I never got a Watcher's Eye Jewel because the ones with the percent max mana as energy shield are something like 30 chaos or 30 exalts each. But that would add some survivability. Similar to this guy would add somewhere in the realm of 1,000 to 1,200 energy shield. But yeah, I think if you're playing at a slower pace and just want something that feels really tanky that just doesn't die, I would say just go the non-crit one. You'll feel the lower damage, but it's much cheaper investment wise, and you can just pick up all the easy to get uniques and then the Piranda Signet rings and just have huge int just off that in your passive tree. And then just work with lower damage, slower playstyle. But yeah, again, any questions, any feedback for the channel? I think this is just going to be a thing that I start doing, is recording builds and talking through them as I play a little bit, or just talking through some of the theory crafting behind them. That's kind of what I've enjoyed, even if no one's watching them. I like the idea of just talking through like these passive tree things. It's probably the thing that's drawn me to PoE and been the most unique for me, even more than the skills, is just the customization of the passive tree, now that I've got like a decent handle on it. And this league cluster duels were super fun for that. So I'll probably make another build about tricksters. I don't know if I'm just gonna throw out a build video about the Fireball Ignite trickster that I have, maybe just an overview and say here it is, because it was fun this league. But any recommendations? I know someone mentioned that another channeling build would be cool, or like Arc Trickster, which was like a close second to this to play. Partly, I don't know if you saw the cosmetics that I have. They're pretty, I'm not gonna say like low budget, but low visibility, or just not over the top. It's just the cloak, the smoking hood with the lightning eyes, and then the pretty plain vest and boots. So I really like that, and then now it just makes me want to make all my characters lightning based characters. So the Lightning Wild Strike was part of that for the Raider. Ignite Fireball Trickster didn't really go along with that, but so Arc Trickster with Archmage support seems really cool. I like the idea of Mind Over Matter builds with Trickster, since you have the regen stuff, and your Ascendancy gives you Weave the Arcane, which is just recovering a lot of your mana, or a chance to recover your mana. So yeah, any feedback on that would be great, or feedback on the channel. If you guys hate this format of me just talking through stuff, I could easily edit them down a little bit, or make it a little more broken up, where I talk during a certain point and then just rapid gameplay, or I could just play through it with no volume and then put audio over the top of it, so it's a little more concise, or less I don't know, less sporadic, or just me babbling about anything. So any suggestions, let me know. I'll take any of it. If you happen to be one of the people that saw one of those AMVs, the anime music videos that I made, and want to see more of that, I'm trying to get that going again. I have the video editing software that I want, and then have been getting videos for that. So, but those are long projects, so I'll be working on that. Yeah, love to hear any feedback, and it's been fun. So I'm out. See you guys.